And the situation in Gaza has prompted Germany's new chancellor to deliver a rare public criticism of Israel. Friedrich Merz says Israel's actions can no longer be justified. He says he feels compelled to speak out when international law is being broken. The unusually strong comments from a German leader add to growing international pressure on Israel.
Is this moment a turning point in relations between Israel and one of its closest allies?
What the Israeli army is now doing in the Gaza Strip, I no longer understand, frankly, what its objective is. To cause such suffering to the civilian population, as has increasingly been the case in recent days, can no longer be justified as a fight against Hamas terrorism. When lines are crossed where international humanitarian law is now really being violated, then Germany, the German chancellor, must also say something about it.
Many see this as a historic statement. It's the first time a German government has so openly addressed the possible violation of international law by Israel in its ongoing war with Hamas. The comments come just days after a joint warning from Canada, France and the UK pressuring Israel over its war in Gaza. Now it is Berlin that is ramping up its criticism of Israel, reflecting a shift in public sentiment. A recent survey shows that 80% of respondents view Israel's conduct in the war as unjustified. That's a rise of 11 percentage points over the last year. And even within Merz's own coalition, concerns are growing over the scale of the humanitarian crisis. Some voices are now calling for a halt to arms exports to Israel.
German weapons must not be used to fuel humanitarian disasters or to violate international law.
While Merz reaffirmed Israel's right to defend itself, his remarks signal a shift between Israel and Germany, one of its staunchest Western allies.
And for more on this, we can speak to DW's chief political editor, Michaela Küfner. Michaela, what has the response been both in Germany and abroad to Merz's comments?
Well, essentially, this has reignited a debate here over weapons deliveries to Israel that had already been debated throughout the last government. In the previous administration, there was a complete focus on having behind-the-scenes talks with the Israeli government. And quite clearly, what Friedrich Merz has here now publicly done is differentiated between Israel and the state and the Netanyahu government. Clearly, he no longer sees it as a constructive way ahead to just have this criticism behind closed doors. And most importantly, within his own governing coalition, the conservative CDU, his own party, and the Social Democrats, we now see calls to end weapons deliveries. Particularly also his vice-chancellor from the Social Democrats is voicing that criticism. At the same time, it is important to note that in the broad line that Germany must support Israel and guarantee the existence of the State of Israel and protect Jewish life, something called Staatsräson. There is no difference between the leading figures of this coalition.
So what does all this mean and what does all this add up to? Are we going to see some tangible changes in Germany's policies towards Israel?
Well, this is a more confrontative tone. It is calling out Benjamin Netanyahu in particular for concerns over whether he actually is still operating, whether this military action in Gaza is operating within the constraints of international humanitarian law, which, after all, is in large parts created as a direct result of the Second World War and the Holocaust committed by Germany. And that's also where Germany's responsibility comes from. So clearly a red line has been crossed here in Germany, and Friedrich Merz stressed that there will always be restraint by Germany to criticize Israel. But this line is now been crossed. It increases the pressure on Israel to act, to supply humanitarian support. Having said all of that, in the end, what matters and what seems to only matter to Benjamin Netanyahu is having the support of US President Donald Trump, and that still seems to be standing firm there.
We'll leave it there for the moment. DW's Chief Political Editor, Michaela Küfner, thanks so much.